This is a podcast about our lived experience, which unfortunately includes infant death and subsequent mental health struggles. Please take good care of yourself and only listen if this content feels safe for you right now. We'll still be here when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Judith.
And I'm Alina. We both lost babies to SIDS in winter 2021.
In the throes of grief, I reached out to a stranger on the internet and our friendship was born.
In the years since, we've been working hard to survive, rebuild, and navigate the continual challenges that have come our way, including divorce,
Job loss,
dating while bereaved,
moving multiple times,
health scares,
pregnancy and parenting a living child,
starting new jobs, and so much more.
We are tired.
Happily ever after is out of the question for us, but this podcast documents our journeys to happier ever after because we believe life after loss is worth living.
So join us as we laugh, cry until we laugh.
Welcome to As Long as I'm Living podcast.
We're so glad you're here.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to As Long as I'm Living podcast. The episode that you're listening to right now is the second part of our interview with Emily, Maliyah's mom. In the first part, which you'll see right below this in your podcast feed, Emily talks about a lot of the medical details surrounding her TFMR. And then in this episode, we go into her thoughts and feelings after the fact and talk more broadly about TFMR and abortion access in the United States. If you're somebody who loves nitty-gritty medical details and birth stories, you're going to love our last episode. So go back and listen to that first. We'll link it in the description. However, if you're somebody who finds pregnancy complications triggering, we recommend you skip that one before and just listen to this one. I promise you'll have all the context you need from the first few minutes of this episode. I did include a couple of minutes from the last episode in the beginning of this episode, just so folks have context. So if you listen to last episode, you can skip the first 3 minutes. And with that, I'm going to send you into the episode. And I just want to thank Emily again for being so open and willing to talk to us so candidly about her TFMR.
The MFM on call said, I want to be very clear with you. We're making this decision for you. It is no longer safe for you to be pregnant. So basically they were like, you have to have this baby. Mm-hmm. And so then it became, how are we having this baby?
Yeah.
And so they presented us with a list of options, basically. And there was like an emergency C-section. There was a D&E, which would obviously, kill our baby. And
D&E for listeners is a dilation and what is it?
Extraction? Evacuation, I think.
It's evacuation. An abortion procedure, yeah.
So wait, hold on, pause. If you do the emergency C-section, then the baby has a chance to live, right. But we don't know what quality of life. If you do the D&E, the baby will not live.
Right.
Those are the two options that you're faced with.
So there's two more options. One is to do induction and labor and hope that the baby survives, but probably won't because she's so little and it's very hard to on the body to labor. Or the fourth option was to do a termination procedure and then do induction and labor.
So
basically to a baby that is already not living.
Yes, they would terminate the pregnancy and then you would deliver.
Correct.
And you were at, just for everyone's awareness, you were at 24 and change, 24
I was
and
at
change
25
weeks.
and 2.
25 and 2.
Which
and
is technically not allowed in New York.
Interesting. Okay, so you were at 25 plus 2, but the baby had not had both doses of the steroid shot. So right after viability, very unlikely to survive, right?
And she was also a week behind in measurement.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. We need more information. I need more information. If in New York, you had those 4 options. Mm-hmm. If you were in Alabama, Texas, whatever, your options, let me just ask, would have been either delivery C-section. Or C-section.
Right.
Okay. And they explained to you that if you choose to try and attempt life in this case, they explained to you that your baby would be in the NICU. What did they say would be the development? Did they give you any?
Yeah, they gave us a lot of numbers and they were all bad.
They're like, you have a 25% chance of survival or whatever.
Yeah, less at that point.
Little, nothing. Okay.
And, with major problems, digestive system is not yet, ready. Eyes are not yet ready. Brain is not fully formed. All of these things, digestion being one really big one. That is just too early. Obviously also lungs, but
her lungs. Yeah.
we were like, we need to think like, this is like all bad. All these options are bad.
Oh my God.
I'm laughing because it was just like such an insane situation. Like, it is insane for them to be like, you're going to die, but also like, can you make this decision like right here now?
This is where I always just come back to like the choice, the language around choice. And it's like, if we had the choice, it wouldn't be any of these options. Like,
exactly.
These are not the choices that we're making here. This is
wow. But I have
so
a question.
bad.
One, did they say to you, once the baby is no longer in your body, we feel very confident that you will survive? Or it's like, we don't even know what's going to happen to you. So like, we just got to make this decision because we don't even know what the next step is.
They basically were like, the faster the better, because this is caused by the placenta. And so we need to get the placenta out. And like, then the healing process can begin. Whatever that looks like your liver is entering liver failure, but like the only way to start this process of getting better is to get the placenta out of you. And so, I will also add that like at this point, I've been on a lot of medications that is like really messing with my head.
Yeah.
I think that's important to note, because like, it wasn't like I was at home making pro-con lists. Like, I hadn't slept in 2 days. I was like on magnesium, which is like really messes up your brain. So I was kind of depending on the people, also like on my husband and like on the doctors to like tell me what to do. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, they're still taking my liver enzymes every 4 hours, and things are continuing to get worse. And also another piece of this is like your blood kind of starts attacking itself. You end up like in hemolysis, which is like red blood cell issue, which was also beginning to happen. And so,
are you still feeling okay at this point, with the exception of the drug side effects? Like, were you now starting to have side effects? I guess it's hard to probably tease it out.
Just mental, like I'm like really fuzzy and like fevery and stuff like from MAG. But the issue is that as things are getting worse, they're coming in and they're telling us that some of the options that they gave us are no longer on the table. So,
which options are no longer on the table?
Basically, they were saying that surgery would be really dangerous for me, because like they weren't sure my body could like handle it at that point. And so basically they said, C-section is the best case possible scenario for your baby, but it is the worst possible case scenario for you. It's like a major abdominal surgery, and like it's not looking great for you.
Right. Because your organ systems were like eating themselves practically. So like not great to rip you open. Oh my
They're
God,
basically
Emily.
making you choose between you and your baby.
Yeah, literally. It is that. It literally was that.
But almost not even that, because the baby wasn't guaranteed to live.
Exactly.
So it was almost like for a chance that your baby lives, a very low chance that your baby lives.
Right. And even if she lives, it will be like not likely a great scenario.
Right. Low quality of life.
So
wow. So surgery's off the table. So the D&E was off the table also.
Right.
As was the C-section. So now
it was like, do we try labor or do we do like termination and labor, basically? And like when they said that she would probably not survive labor, I also just couldn't think of like killing her in labor, like slow. It felt like a slow, painful death. Like I just couldn't think of that.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
That makes so much sense to me. I think all of us who are listening to this story are like putting ourselves in your shoes and just like it's just overwhelming even to think about, like just making this choice. It's like you can't even even with all my mental faculties, like I can't. You have to make a decision, but the brain like doesn't know how to process this kind of information.
Yeah. And you're doing it on the clock. So basically they said the guy who is the best at doing these termination procedures, which is basically like an amnio, it's like an ultrasound guided needle. Yeah. The guy who's the best at this doctor who is like going to be the best and, whatever, like he's off shift in 2 hours.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. So now we have like a 2-hour time clock on this.
And what was your husband saying?
So initially he was like, this is your decision. This is your body. Like, I can't make it. And I just was like, I cannot make this decision myself for us. I can't. Like, I need for my own like sanity to know that this was like a joint decision. And I can't, I get that it's my body, but like we have to be on the same
I mean, you
page.
think about it, it really is, it's really almost like a parenting decision when you think about it. It sounds kind of crazy to say, but it is a parenting decision. My husband and I have talked about this with the risk factors of the gene that we're selecting out for. Like, how much risk are we willing to accept? Like, it is a parenting decision. This is probably the first parenting decision that you and your husband made, and it's such a fucking shitty one, Emily.
Yeah, really bad. And I will say, like, you know, I don't want to get too much into politics, but I will say I've been involved in reproductive justice for many, 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 many years, like long before I was planning to start a family. And I have very strong feelings about like choice. And it was still a fucking impossible decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
of course it was.
It's like nobody wants to be put in that space where like we wanted this baby so badly, you know, like I had the registry, I had the like everything, you know, but it just, we didn't have really any choice.
Yeah.
But going back to this conversation about choice, at this point, if we were in Texas, you would not have a choice.
Right.
You would have had to deliver.
You would have had to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
Try to deliver her alive.
And the feeling that you said that you felt is that you felt like that would be causing her a slow and painful death.
Right.
So
I think
I
they
just
said
think
that the
about
chance
the
of survival
women
was less than 5% from labor. And we would be causing her trauma that like would make things even worse.
I just think about the women in Texas and in Alabama and in Missouri where I used to live. And I think about that and just how horrific it must be to be told that you don't have any choice at all. And you feel that what's the option that's presented to you is leading your child to have a slow and painful death. Like that's the feeling that came up for you.
And I will say, you know, like I got really great care, and I see stories of people who don't get great care. Like this was great medical care, and this was still the best option. Like I see stories of people getting turned away from emergency rooms. I had no symptoms, you know, like if I went there and I was like, well, you know, my blood pressure has been raising, like who's to say? I wouldn't like, and this all happened within 48 hours of my liver going from like 2 times the upper limit to 11. And this is like, you could get turned away and this could happen in a day.
So did you feel like each doctor, when you were being presented with these options, were they being empathetic? Were they being kind? How was the first responder care?
Okay, I will say the nurses were amazing. Nurses are like angels on earth. The nurses were fantastic. The way that it's set up in the hospital I was in was that you get assigned a nurse for a 12-hour shift, and they are only assigned to you. So I had like somebody with me the entire time, just them. The doctors, it was an emergency situation. I think they were trying to present the facts. I think it was like a lot of, you need to understand this. You need to like, cause we didn't.
Yeah.
You know, we were like, well, what about if we wait another week? And they were like, I don't think you get what's going on. And we didn't. Yeah. But it was the doctors were very like, you know, this is an urgent traumatic situation. Like we need you to get it. And so it felt not necessarily like pastoral care, if you will, but I think I understand why.
Yeah.
So what did you choose to do?
So we ended up doing a termination and labor because it was so early. I was in labor for 31 hours. which is just like what happens when it's really early.
Well, yeah, because the placenta's not ready to detach. Like nothing is ready, right? Your body's not ready.
Was that guy who was so good at it? Was he really that good? Like, do you feel like that 2 hours made a difference?
I will say this: once I knew that that she wasn't any more alive, I was able to have a lot more drugs, and I took all of them.
Honestly, that's so rational. Like that makes so much sense to me. That makes so much sense to me.
And I was offered like Ativan and stuff like that, and I was like, yes to all of the above. Like I
hand it over,
bring it all.
Yeah.
So
you made the decision to terminate and labor
and took forever.
And did you know she was a girl at this point, or
no?
Was that
we didn't know.
And that must have been such a bittersweet moment when she was born.
Yeah, so unfortunately it didn't end there, because then they couldn't get the placenta out, and that was like the whole point that they needed, because that's what caused all of this. And so in kind of like kick you when you're down situation, I ended up having to have a D&E for the placenta, even though they had told me that like I couldn't withstand it before. And so I ended up being in like emergency surgery post-delivery for the placenta. So,
did you hemorrhage?
No, thankfully.
Well, did your body end up eating not eating its organs, but were you able to withstand that procedure? Like, was your body tolerating it?
Yeah. It ended up, like basically as soon as I was out of surgery, like my liver enzymes started coming back down.
Wow.
And just like everything started normalizing, and my platelets started normalizing, and like all this just got better. I was completely in shock. Like it didn't register that I had a baby. Like it did not register for a long time, like weeks, really, because I had so many follow-up appointments with doctors for my body.
Right.
That was the concern at that point. There was no baby anymore. It was like I had to get ultrasounds, an abdominal ultrasound, to see if my kidneys were working anymore. I had to like see a nephrologist. I had to like that was the concern. And so that was my concern, because that was everyone else's concern. And
so when did it hit you that you had lost a baby?
Probably about 3 weeks after.
Wow. And
I mean, I knew rationally, but it wasn't like grief didn't hit, because I was just going to so many doctors and like worrying about, well, I will say, so part of the deal of them letting me get discharged from the hospital was that the next day I had to go back to my OB, because they had to double check that my blood pressure meds, whatever they had given me, was working. That was like part of the deal, that I could leave. And so I went back to my OB the day after the hospital, full of pregnant people. And that was originally supposed to be my 26-week appointment, where I was supposed to do the glucose test. And for whatever reason, it was still coded in there as like prenatal. And you're going to love this story. I just know. So I go back to the room, and the nurse goes, "Did you drink the glucose drink?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, "Oh, did you already do the glucose test?" And I said, "No, we're not doing the glucose test anymore." That's all that I said. Oh my
God.
And then she goes, "Oh," she was clearly confused. And so she hands me this packet of papers, and she goes, "Well, here's some information about like what your baby is doing and looking like at 26 weeks.
Oh my God.
And it felt like I thought I was being punked. I looked at my husband and I go, "What the fuck is going on?" I literally said that. And I just started crying, and he was like, "There's no baby anymore." And the nurse like fled the room.
Oh my God.
And then of course they come in and they're like, "Let's take your blood pressure."
Read the chart. Read the chart.
Oh my God.
So bad. So bad.
That is the worst that I've heard.
It hasn't even been 12 hours since I was from the hospital.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'm so sorry. I want to make sure we cover. I have like so many questions.
Sorry. I know
like
that was a long story.
All of this happened. So here is okay. So you've had this termination. I want to ask, what does this mean for your future your future fertility. Like what are now the considerations you and your husband have to take into account as you try to grow your family?
Yeah. So one of the biggest issues is that HELP syndrome, like I said, is 1 in 1,000 pregnancies. But once you have HELP, it's 1 in 5. So that's terrifying.
Yeah.
That's really scary.
Can they monitor you differently now and treat it earlier?
So the hope is that it is later and less severe. That is, in general, the way that it works. And so I would, I'm super, super high risk now. And so I'm only being seen by MFM in the future. And also I have a nephrologist who now I go to regularly, who does blood pressure stuff. And they check my liver enzymes monthly. That being said, like it is a very quickly advancing disease. Like it happens within a day or two. So it doesn't necessarily give you much solace that like monthly.
Yeah.
I don't know. All you can do is like hope for the best, I guess. It's really scary.
Yeah. There's someone that we connect with on Instagram. Her first daughter died of health complications and her second daughter was born alive. So there's one little data point. It happens. It was exactly what you just said. She did wind up getting it, but it was later.
Yeah.
And less severe. But that is so terrifying.
It's just scary. I think I think there's like hope, but it's hard to have hope. And I know like the same way that you guys say like 100% of my babies are dead, like that's how I feel. 100% of my pregnancies end terribly. So like how do I convince myself that like it won't be that?
And I can also imagine like, and this is true for SIDS too, you're fine, then you're not fine.
Right.
So it's like any minute that you're fine doesn't feel like evidence that 5 minutes from now you're going to be fine.
Right.
Because it happens like that. Snap of the fingers and things can change.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about how you feel your place in both the baby loss community and the TFMR community, because I know TFMR parents at large typically can feel a little bit out of place in the baby loss community. And then you're this niche inside of the TFMR community where you had to terminate for your own health. I mean, and admittedly, your daughter's quality of the remaining minutes she had left, of course, but this is a different situation than the other 2 TFMR moms we've had on our podcast where they were terminating for the baby's best health. In this case, it was you were literally dying. Like, I think that is not an overstatement. Your doctors made it pretty clear you were going to die within a few hours, right?
I don't know how soon, but like they were like, it will happen if we don't do something. Yeah. So initially I did not know the term TFMR. That's actually how I found your podcast. Is like once I learned it, I was looking for stories and things like that. And then I saw the episodes you had done. And when I got into that community, it just felt very different than my story. And I think a lot of it has to do with the rhetoric around like making the loving decision for your child. It didn't resonate with me because it felt like I made the decision for myself. And that is like a huge piece of guilt that just like is additional. Like you hear moms say all the time, I would do anything for my kid. And it's like, okay, but would you die if you were literally faced with it? And like, you don't know if they'd live. Yeah. And I think that is something I've really had to come to terms with is like, I don't really know if people really mean that. Like they say that, but like if you really are faced with that and you know that they may not live either, like that's really hard.
I know I have said like, when Quinn was born, I remember thinking like, do I love this squishy little alien? I'm not sure, but I remember the sensation that I felt was I would throw myself in front of a bus for him, right? But what I'm saying when I'm saying that is I would give my life for him to live.
Have his life. Yeah. Right.
That was not your situation.
Yeah.
But I can imagine how that rhetoric, how hearing those words, I would die for my child, I would whatever, like that probably doesn't.
But I disagree. I mean, I disagree with Alina. meaning that I don't think that I could wholeheartedly say I would die for my child because I have other children. And is that you're asking that to rob one child of a mother for their whole life because you can't, I couldn't make that decision. I'm sure I could if I had to, but my point is, like, I don't think I can wholeheartedly say I would die for my child. I have other people who need me. And Emily, you have other children that aren't in this world yet, but if you want to pursue that, I'm sure that I always say, if you want a baby, you will find a way to get the baby into your world. So I have no doubt that if you want a baby, you'll have a baby. But my point is that you have those children who need you. They need you to be alive. Your husband needs you to be alive. Your mother, like, this is honestly what I think of, Alina. I think about my mother. My mother needs me to be alive. I cannot do to her what my son did to me. And I feel like that, maybe it's because of my perspective as someone who's lost a child, but like, I think that we need to have more complex views and nuanced views.
Yes.
We can't just say, I would die for my child. What about your husband? What about your future children? What about your mother?
Really
you
went
are
into my mind a lot. That went into my mind a lot. Like, I thought about my husband. I thought about, like, and he's lost people in his life already. And I thought about my parents. I thought about my siblings. And like, and I was like, for a 5% chance, like, I was just like, this is like,
it's also a very easy
math.
thing.
It's not
It's
math.
a very easy thing to just say,
yes.
Oh, I would die for my child.
Yes.
But like, would you? Like, in the actual situation, like, it's kind of the same as people who in general about abortion say, oh, I would never. But it's like, actually, would you never? Like, if it actually came down to the actual situations that actual human beings face on planet Earth when they're making choices about pregnancy outcomes, like,
yeah, I mean, so
all you can do is make the best choice that you can make in that moment with what you have at the time. The limited information, the limited brain capacity, you have so many limitations, and you made the best decision that you could at that time. Those parents, the other TFMR parents in the community, made the best decision at that time that they could make. Maybe now, 5 years later, 2 years later, maybe the decision will look different. Maybe it would be exactly the same. But the reality is that you are a human. We are not computers that put in inputs and spit out an output. It's not about statistic chances. It's not about like it's like at the end of the day, you're human. And I think reducing it all to, I would die for my children, or there's 5%. It's complicated. It's nuanced. We are human, and we're flawed. We are so fundamentally flawed. So I just feel like we could sit. To me, it's like I could piece apart. I could argue it from any single angle, and I don't think there would be a wrong angle or a right angle. I don't think there would be a wrong choice or a right choice. You could not have made a choice that I would ever. First of all, it wouldn't be my place to disagree with. But if you're like, Judith, what do you think? I would say you made there are so many factors. How could anyone make? There's no wrong and there's no right. There just is.
So
there just is a
I
choice.
think like that. I think that is really part of this whole TFMR conversation. In theory, 10% of TFMRs are for maternal health. I actually think that's probably not true. I think that people probably don't say it. I think it's like the stigma on top of the stigma on top of the stigma of pregnancy loss. And I think that it's probably severely underreported. And I will also say, technically, according to who makes these rules, like, it was a stillbirth because the baby was not born alive and it was after 20 weeks. And so, like, if you're looking at statistics by who says what, then like that is where you would put that loss. So I think it's interesting. I don't know how many people are out there. Like, when I look on Instagram and I know the baby loss community, there's like 1 or 2 that I know had similar stories, which is really small, but I just think that people are not vocal about it. And I get it. I get it. Like, I think people are worried about getting doxxed, and it's so high. Like, there's just so much going on, about it right now. And it's scary.
Can we go back to Maliyah for a second? Can you tell me a little bit about like what the conversations look like from you to her? What do you tell her when you speak to her? Like, what does your relationship look like? How have you placed that into your world?
Yeah. So, well, I haven't even said this, and I'm not sure if we want to put this in or not, but like, I'm currently pregnant. And so,
Oh my God, you must be terrified and
terrified.
excited.
That's
28
scary.
weeks today.
Oh my God.
Yay!
You made it so far.
Oh my God, I am breathing a huge sigh of
How
relief
did
over here.
you
I thought
do
you were going to say
that?
like 18 weeks, and I was like, oh God, the roller coaster's starting.
It's been starting.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. So are your blood pressures good now this time?
Yeah. So I'm on a whole slew of different meds. I mean, we don't need to get into it, but like, yeah, I'm highly, 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 highly monitored.
Okay.
Rightfully so.
And the reason why I brought that up in this context is like, I think it has changed my conversations to Maliyah is like more like as you're the bigger sister and like, you know, like you have to like help this baby like come earthside. And like, it's funny because like there's been this picture that's been circulating about like a baby that's in the womb and then like the rainbow baby kind of like reaching out to it. I don't know if you've seen it on social media, but when I see that picture, I'm like, she better not be bringing this baby with her. Like that's the conversation I have. I'm like, no, like you can talk to him, but like no.
Yeah.
So I'm like scolding her like, mom, like you like I don't like it may be lonely wherever you are, but like you cannot take him too.
That's so sweet.
But I think you know I think that it is hard because I do think about the guilt when I talk to her and like, you know, like would she have been okay? And it's hard because I see stories of people who had babies who were born at that gestational age and they're fine. I also see stories of many babies who were born and they died. And of course, like I had a different set of medical circumstances that like wouldn't allow me necessarily the options that like allowed those babies like the best case scenario. But like I do talk to her about that and about like I was just like doing what I could, you know, and yeah.
Yeah.
And what about your husband? Because your husband almost lost his wife and lost his daughter. So how does he hold this all?
It's a great question. We are very, very, very different.
Okay.
So I am very outwardly emotional, extroverted. I much less so now, but still. And he holds a lot of his emotions close. So it's hard. But I have asked him a couple of times specifically about like labor and delivery. And I think what's really complicated is like I took all the drugs, like I said, and he was 100% present. And it was really scary for him, I think. And I don't want to put the words in his mouth, but like when we talked about another pregnancy, like that's really scary for him too, you know, like he's a big stats guy, finance guy. And like, you know, like we look at that 1 in 1,000 now is 1 in 5. And it's like, those are not great odds. Like, so it's hard, I think.
I
think
sometimes
for
marvel at the
men,
fact that some people just get pregnant and then have babies and the babies live.
well, I was going to say, I
Took
think
the words out
about
of my
TFMR, like if you feel like you are a minority and a minority of minority, or whatever, you know, like you're just like a little teeny segment of a teeny segment of a teeny segment. I think of your husband and I'm like, okay, talk about being a teeny segment and a teeny segment and a teeny segment. Like, I think for men, you know, in this case, there's so much trauma that came for him. I can imagine you too, and him. And I think, I just think of how lonely that must be. I don't know.
And I think, you know, I seek out a lot of groups, you know, like whether it's a support group or social media or like listening to podcasts. And there isn't as much. I don't know if you know, he would take advantage, but it's just different, I think, to find community. And like, I will say I speak relatively openly about her dying and I have been writing a lot about it. I have a blog. I like write pretty often, but I don't ever share about the TFMR piece of it. Mostly just for fear of people not understanding. And I think like
even in New York City, like even in, do you feel that way even in New York City?
I mean,
or because
who knows how long it will be like that in New York City?
Yeah.
I think that's the fear. It's like things are changing quickly and it's scary. I mean, like I remember the first time that I find myself in Texas a lot for like different reasons. I wish I was there less, but every time that I go there, I'm scared because if something was to happen, like even if I was to get in a car accident, like I couldn't share really my medical history. I would not feel safe sharing my medical history. And like that's complicated. You know, like and that's hard. And you don't know where it will be when in different states things change rapidly and it's yeah.
How does it feel to hear all these politicians talking about essentially your life, but like they're all these like people, men, talking about from up on their fancy podiums, and they're, you know, they're talking about you.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they really are. A lot of times the stories that I think the thing that's really complicated for me is that they talk a lot about like, oh, that is like so rare. Like, you know, oh, that'll never happen. And it's like, well, once you're the one,
yeah,
it can. It can and it does. Mm-hmm. And so when I hear them being like that, you know, well, that case, you know, or they talk about like the life of the mother as if like that's just like so out there, rarely happens. And it's like, oh, actually, you know,
yeah.
But I like I said, I've been kind of involved in reproductive justice for a long time. And so I'm kind of used to that like rhetoric. It never affected me personally in that way, but like, I was always well aware of the fact that like these people just don't have any personal experience with.
Yeah. The only moral abortion is my abortion.
Yeah. And same thing with so many of these social issues, you know, that it's like so many things. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's hard.
It is hard.
Well, I really appreciate you sticking with us and
I know it's a long
being so patient about us scheduling this interview, and then all your patience as we struggled with the audio recording and me exiting out of the interview, etc.
We're just a shit show.
I'm proud that my audio stayed on. So look at that.
Yeah, you're
the best part of the whole thing. Like your audio was the best. You were the most consistent. You showed up and did everything right. It's the rest of us that can't get our act together.
I'm honored that you had me as a guest. It's so funny to be talking to you guys in real life because I think like, you know, you've talked about this, but it's like I feel like you're my friends in my head, which this is so awkward because it's like very one-sided that like I feel that way and you're like never met me for a moment in your life. And I'm like, oh
no,
yeah.
But I know that we would have a lot in common.
I'm like, these are the women that I hang out with on Mondays. Like
yes.
I met a bereaved mom at this at a bereaved parent event recently, and she's a podcast listener, and she was like talking to me and my husband. She was like, "You guys were so crazy to do IVF during your wedding," and I was like, "Yeah, we were crazy to do that." And then I was like, "How funny that she knows that." Like I wasn't offended at all, but it's just.
That's how I felt at Alina's wedding. At Alina's wedding, all these people were like talking to me. They're like, "Show me a picture of your daughter. How's your daughter?"
Oh my
and I was
gosh.
Like, if I know you, but
it's really weird.
But that's okay. Like, I mean, I was happy to show them a picture, but my husband's an introvert, and like he was very afraid. He was like, all these people keep talking to me, and I don't know any of them, and
they know everything about me.
They know literally me with my husband because like I'll share stuff on Instagram, and like they know, and like he's like, what?
Yeah. But I think with time, like it's become like part of our language. Like just the loss in general is so much a part of our life. It's so fully integrated. It's like there's no me without Aiden, and there's no me without loss. So everyone around me just kind of like adjusted to how open I am about it because I don't exist without it. If that makes sense.
Well, I think
like,
it just is. The way that I always feel is like if I'm gonna not talk about it, then it's because of I want to prevent them from an awkward situation.
Yes.
And so I don't feel that way anymore. You know, like if it's my family and I'm thinking about it all the time, then if they're asking me, then I'm going to share it.
Yeah. And I think we need more and more. I mean, not to pressure anyone. Everyone's entitled to tell their story however they want to tell it. But I think we need more and more families, men, women, everyone telling the stories of what it's like to be that exception, you know, the rape, incest case of the mother, whatever, those three things they always rattle off.
Yeah.
Because it affects all of us. And one of the things that you'd sent me, and then we can wrap up here, is like when we talk so much about women's, like your body, your choice, and we talk about how this, like, I just think about your husband. I've been thinking about your husband a lot in this conversation. I don't even know why. But it's not just a women's thing.
No.
It's not. It's not. Like, your husband would have been severely affected had you died. Your mother would have been severely affected. Your father would have been severe. So when we talk about like it's a woman's thing, it's not a woman's thing. It's an everybody thing. When you let if you let women die in childbirth because their baby is giving them preeclampsia, you're talking about an entire family system, not just a woman, not just a uterus, not just a woman in your body. It's like all of us are so intertwined. It affects all of us. I get so angry when people speak about it as like an issue that only affects women. And the reality is it affects the entire family system. Men, women, children, all of us are affected.
Yeah.
So it's not a woman's issue. It's a human issue. And that's the hill I die on.
I agree.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, well, we could leave it there.
Well, very gentle congratulations on your pregnancy.
Thank
Please
you.
keep us posted because now I'm like
Fingers crossed.
terrified and so excited.
No, but 28 is so solid. You're doing such a great job.
Solid.
That's
You
how I
are
feel.
crushing it.
I woke up this morning and I was like, look at us, 80% chance of survival.
Oh my
You
God.
are
Do you look up the
doing-
stats every day? Like every week, do you look up the stats?
Well, I will
know,
say,
of
like,
course,
I'm
of
not,
course.
I'll never have any of those like regular pregnancy apps or anything for the normies. Like, no, but I have one that's for pregnancy after loss. And they like talk about,
Hey, I don't have one of those.
oh, you should. That's the only one that I would look at where they say,
I don't even know how pregnant I am. So it doesn't even matter. Like,
Judith stays out of it.
I say I literally do not know. So like, I don't have an app because I don't know how pregnant I am, but
that's because your trauma comes after birth. Like for me, I'm
right,
so
that's
hyper
true.
every
That's
single
true.
day because
That's true.
my trauma is like literally
That's
every
true.
day.
That's
Judith
true.
is like, okay, Sid's window begins
Exactly.
next week.
Yes,
we
that
gotta
is how I
watch the
feel about
baby.
That is actually how I
Exactly.
feel about it.
Exactly.
I'm like, okay, like that. I even like remember when my daughter was in the hospital. I was like, okay, well, it was like the first few hours she was alive. I was like, actually, this is very narrow. Sid, like this is not the Sid's window. I don't have to worry. Like babies don't die quite yet. I've got like a couple hours. I was like, I'll rest. I'll wake up and be anxious in an hour or two.
Totally.
Catch a little nap.
That's how it is. But wait, I was going to ask you something, but I don't remember what it is. Oh, I was going to say that at 30 weeks, you have a 90% chance of survival.
That's
so
right,
you're
we're
just
close.
like, you're
right around the corner.
climbing. You're like climbing. You're making great progress day by day.
Yeah, slowly but surely.
To all of our wonderful new friends, we want to hear from you. Email us at aslongasimlivingpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at aslongasimlivingpodcast. We'll get back to you as soon as our grieving brains allow.
Yay!